Hello, welcome to the Fusion Artist Studio, where each week, courtesy of the Fusion Arts Alliance, we have a conversation with someone from Marion, Grant County who is involved in one way or another with the arts. Either as a performing artist, as a visual artist, someone who is involved in the administration, the complete panorama of arts in Marion and Grant County. Our guest today is Marsha Vermillion, who is a faculty member at Marion High School, has been there for a very long time.
A very long time, yes.
I don't want to put too much emphasis on it. Marsha, tell us about yourself and how long you've been at the high school.
I think it's been since 1998.
Okay. Last century.
Yes, it definitely was in the 20th century that I started there. That's correct. I came to the Marion area originally from Columbia City via Indiana State University in Terre Haute, and I taught at Oak Hill for 7 years, and I took a little trip down to Indianapolis and taught at Bishop Chatard for 1 year, and I actually was the teacher on staff at the D Home at one point, and then I went to Marion after that, and I've been there ever since.
In the English department.
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
But it involves a lot more than the English department. You're involved in music, you're involved in theater. Talk about those things. Tell us what you do at the high school.
Sure. I have been directing the plays and also in charge of the speech team since I started at Marion High School. It was also important to me when I started at Marion that students have an opportunity to be involved in a musical at least once a year, and in the past the musical had kind of fallen under the jurisdiction totally of the music department, and I really wanted it to be something that students who were not involved in the music department could still be involved in. So we've been doing a musical every year since I started there too, and I've had choir directors who really, after the first couple of years, have been very supportive of the joining of the two groups, and that's true also this year. We have a new choir director. Her name is Kelly Williams, and she had been doing musicals at the school that she was at before, so she was very excited to hear that we had a tradition of doing a musical once a year, and so we are doing one this year. We postponed it as long as we could to try to maybe have an opportunity for the students to participate without masks, and we're still hopeful about that.
And the musical this year is?
It's called Working, and it's based on the Studs Terkel book, Working.
Oh, wonderful.
And
yes.
So it's a show that I've been familiar with since I was in college. It's actually the first show that I was in when I went to college at Indiana State. It has been updated since then. So they did some additional interviews to update some of the job descriptions and the monologues of the characters.
Do they work with the language from Terkel's book?
Well, some of the language from Terkel's book is not going to be functional. But yes, right. The monologues in the show are all from the monologues from the interviews of Studs Terkel. So it's a very special piece, I think, especially right now that we need to celebrate the American worker. And it's a show I've been wanting to do, but it's not a very familiar show. So whenever I would bring it up, I would just kind of get a blank stare from a lot of people, and this was the year.
Did this get the Broadway treatment? Was it on Broadway?
It was. It had the unfortunate scheduling issue of opening about the same time that A Chorus Line did on Broadway. Oh. So it just never really garnered a whole lot of attention on Broadway, and it did not run very long.
Okay.
But it has been one that a lot of community theaters and colleges and smaller theaters have worked with since then, and in the latest incarnation of the show, Lin-Manuel Miranda has added some music to it, and so that's a nice hook for the students. Once they hear that the author of Hamilton is involved, they're all happy about it, and so
the name Lin-Manuel Miranda means a lot to young people.
It does. So right now, it's the students are very excited about the show.
I've got to ask you a question, and I know the answer is going to break my heart. Have the kids ever heard of Studs Terkel?
No. They had not. But I gave them a little bit of a history lesson. So they are aware that the words that they are speaking are words that were garnered in these interviews, and that, Stubbs Terkel, when there are references in the script to Evansville, Indiana, that I'm like, no, he really was interviewing somebody from Evansville, Indiana. When you work in Chicago, it's very easy to find somebody that is from Evansville, Indiana. And
Stubbs Terkel was a journalist in Chicago. He was at WFMT in Chicago for many years on public radio. He did extensive interviews with people. His first book was called Division Street, in the separation of people in Chicago. Then he did Working and probably 3 or 4 other books. And he was a piece of work.
Yes.
He was a character. Talk about the musicals at Marion High School. There is a long and rich tradition going back to Richie Walton of doing the musical, doing them well and doing them professionally at the high school. That went into decline for several years. Has it been tough to bring it back to life?
Well, we definitely do not have the wherewithal to have the sets that would have existed back in those days. That's just the reality of the situation. We are a self-supporting organization. Our show budgets are based on our ticket sales from the previous show. And so we definitely do not have the money to bring in Broadway sets. But I also believe that for many of our students who plan to pursue the arts somewhere outside of high school, the reality is they are going to be involved. It's much more likely that they would be involved in a community theater or a college theater that would expect them to know how to put some of their own sets together and have some experience in those areas. And so, looking at it from the perspective of educational theater, I think it's important that our students understand what goes into all aspects of the performance.
You do things other than the musicals, too.
I do, yes, true.
Let's talk about that for a minute. What are the young people interested in on stage these days?
Well, it really is interesting because there is a resurgence in some interest in musicals especially, but yes, there's always been that core group of kids who looked for some sort of outlet through the performing arts. And as a teacher, that's really gratifying to me that, I'm at a point in my life that my own performing definitely has taken a back seat. The older I get, the harder it is for me to memorize lines. I can still tell you some lines from shows I was in 30 years ago.
Let's go down that road just briefly. That is, you were involved with civic theater.
Yes.
Have you done other theater things in Marion in your years here?
I did do one show with the group that performs occasionally in Fairmount, the Grant County Players.
Right. Yeah.
I did do a production of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown with them.
Okay.
Prior to coming to Marion, I had performed in Fort Wayne some, and again, I performed a lot at Indiana State. So my performance experience on stage actually started in 4th grade. I was performing the daring cross-dressing role of Orvie, the first mouse on the moon, and that show.
Somehow I missed that.
Yeah, that one did not perform on Broadway, but we did get to travel around and perform at other schools, and that really stuck out in my mind. And I had the benefit of the person who directed that was one of our elementary teachers, but he had a background in professional summer stock, and so did his wife. And his wife actually directed our plays, our musicals, at the high school. And this was in Columbia City. So I really was nurtured by people who had made a career out of theater and then sought other paths when they realized that it's a little difficult to live off of tomato soup made out of ketchup packages. And so they still, though, nurtured a love of arts in their students. And so my performance history started then.
Theater well done addresses issues that are going on outside the theater in the larger community. In many respects, theater for students goes to the classics, and many times the students have no idea what the issue is outside the building. What are you finding today with young people and either straight theater or musicals? What are their interests? What do they want to pursue on stage?
A great number of our students have an interest in social justice. A great number of our students are interested in defeating racism, defeating bigotry of many forms. And so I find that gratifying. A couple of years ago at the high school, we did a show called The Diviners, and one of the main characters in that show is mentally challenged. It's never really explained exactly what is wrong with him, and part of that is just based on the time period that the play is set in. But the students that were involved in it, especially the student who played that part, was very concerned that we showed that character in a respectful light as he should have been, and especially for that particular student, he has a family member who is part of the community of those who are differently abled, and so it was very important to him that we showed that character with respect. And I find that most of my students are really very concerned about social justice initiatives today.
In many areas of school life, it has become very difficult to get kids to become involved. Theater, how is it doing?
I would love to say that we haven't seen that drop off this year, but I would have to agree that in general, with a lot of our students as virtual students this year, with fears about COVID, we have definitely lost numbers in terms of kids who have wanted to be involved, whether that's because their parents are telling them they want them to be at home more and they want to make sure they know that they are away from people as much as possible and socially distancing. That's actually one of the reasons we ended up picking working, because it was a show that I thought, well, if we do have to have masks on, people are wearing masks in the workplace, and so we can work around that. And
how are you going to do it? Are you going to have masks?
Well, again, right now we're kind of playing it by ear.
Yeah.
The show is in
Things
April.
are looking better.
They are, yes. And the show is the second weekend in April. And for instance, Dr. Moore has given permission to the school that there can be a prom this year, and that's about the same time. So I'm assuming if we could have a prom, then maybe that will relax our mask issues a little bit.
That's County Health Officer Dr.
Yes,
Moore.
correct. Thank you. And because of the nature of working, most of the performers are on stage by themselves anyway, because it's very monologue driven. And so, for instance, my daughter is in show choir, and just 2 weeks ago they performed, and they were allowed to have their masks off during the actual performance. But then they had to put them on as soon as they went backstage. So, we're just playing it by ear right now, but I am hopeful. That's part of the reason we're doing the musical in April this year. We usually do it in the fall. That I'm hopeful that maybe we won't have to have masks on.
You're an English teacher involved in theater, specifically musicals. Have you ever tried teaching playwriting to young people?
No, I've been dabbling in some playwriting of my own, but that's just a recent thing.
That's hidden in the closet.
That is, yes.
Along with the novel.
I haven't even approached that yet, really. But no, I have not attempted to have students write a full-length play. Now, when I did teach an advanced theater class, I did have students write some scenes for themselves to perform. And I did that at Marion High School several years ago. I also taught an adult acting class at CSA a few years ago. And so besides having them perform materials that they were finding that had already been written, I did ask them to write one piece that they could perform, but never a full-length piece that I would have students
Yeah.
right.
You're involved at CS or at Civic Theater. Are you involved in the management of
I am on
the board?
I am on the board of directors. Yes.
Let's talk about that. They have taken their lumps in the year of COVID. How is Civic doing?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, not well. When you consider that it is an organization that very much lives or dies from the support of the community, and through no fault of their own, the community has not been able to support us through ticket sales. The budget is very tight, and we definitely have been looking for some ways to try to raise money other than performances, but we are back up and running with performances. And
Just did a show.
Actually, we've just done 2 shows. Our Young Actors with a Cause performed, and then our regular slate of seasons.
And what's coming up at Civic?
Well, oh gosh, what is coming up?
I didn't mean to blindside you.
What is coming up? Well, I know we have auditions coming up for Chicago.
Okay.
Which was actually supposed to be last spring. And so that has been bumped up to this spring, since it was a show that was already slated as a regular season show. And so we're really hoping that will draw in a lot of people, because it is going to need dance. It is going to be it's going to need talented vocalists. It is going to need talented actors. It's going to need people of a lot of different ages. It would need some Indiana Wesleyan students, maybe. So it would need some people that, we are trying to draw in a diverse crowd with that show. And as much as anything else, I would say that we really are trying to come up with some shows. Now, that one was already planned. That one was already in the works. But we are trying to really come up with some shows that they involve different age groups. They involve different ethnicities.
Attract different audiences.
Yes, definitely.
Let's come back to working at Marion High School. It will be in April. The dates again?
The 9th and 10th.
9th and 10th of April, which is a Friday and Saturday.
It is the weekend after Easter, yes.
And tickets are on sale?
They are not yet, but they will be, and they will be available online. We actually do have a way that people can buy tickets online, or they can buy them at the door. And again, I've kind of held off on doing that until we see what our seating capacity will be. And
there will be social distancing, we know that.
Yes.
That theater holds about, 1,200 people, I think, something like that.
And we definitely will not be able to have that.
Yeah, you don't
people.
have a problem, yeah. But you will be able to accommodate those who want to be there.
Yes, and so, by not listing the tickets yet on sale online, then if we find out that we really are going to have to do reserved seating, I haven't, already put the tickets for sale general admission. I usually just prefer to have them general admission. It's easier,
Sure.
quite honestly. And so if we find out we would have to have them reserve seating, I don't want to jump the gun and put them out there for general admission and then have to backtrack.
So that is the musical Working, based upon Studs Terkel's book, April 9 and 10 at Marion High School. The musical is back. Marsha Vermillion, we appreciate your spending some time with us.
Thank you.
And we thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and join us again next week when we will have another visit here in the artist studio.